What's up, guys? I'm TRIPPLEJAZ, you're Sarah, or maybe another name, and today we're going to be going through a piece that I made to celebrate Sonic CD's 30th anniversary. Now, as some of you know, and some of you might not know, I got to do work for Sonic Origins when it came out. I did social media promotional key art for Sonic Origins. This was commissioned by Sega for the game. So I don't own any of the rights to those images. I decided to create an image in the same fashion and kind of walk you through my exact process that I used to get that piece done and over the finish line. Now, before we get started, I want to tell you something really important. Right now, I'm having an 80% off sale of my character airbrush course for Affinity Designer. I walk you through my exact process for taking the characters from sketch to final airbrush key art fully rendered. I think this course is incredibly valuable, so I thought a sale would be a great way to put it in the hands of as many people as possible. And I really want you to learn the techniques I'm going to teach you in this. Now, if you don't have Affinity Designer, that's fine. A lot of the techniques I'm going to teach you cross over to many other programs as well. So with triple shill out of the way, let's jump right into the piece. I'm going to show you how I did this starting right now.
Welcome to Art Walkthrough, where I guide you through my works to help you be a better player at the game of art. So the purpose of this piece was to celebrate Sonic CD's 30th anniversary. And so I wanted to do a piece that celebrated the introduction of Knuckles and Amy into the game on Sonic Origins Plus. One, because I thought Knuckles in Sonic CD makes a lot of sense. I think his kit and the way that he plays well with the exploratory nature of Sonic CD. And also Amy, because I just think it's cool that she's finally playable in the game that she was introduced in. And the main level I thought Knuckles would be really fun in is actually Wacky Workbench, because I think Wacky Workbench has a lot of verticality that sends you upward that would just be perfect for Knuckles to play around in. I think it's really important when you approach a big piece like this that you think about the composition first, so I'm just going to hop into Procreate real quick and lay down some ideas for what this could look like. I have a pretty strong idea in my head already, and so I thought just getting it out on paper or my iPad would be the best way to just deal with the beginning of this project. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that I like to work from big to small. So starting with composition and a value check is the best way to go about getting a strongest piece by the end. If it doesn't work at thumbnail size and if it doesn't work at the value stage, it's not going to work once you add all the colors and the polish to it. Once I'm done with this stage, I'm just going to do a line art pass on the characters to prepare them for the airbrushing and rendering stage. The reason I'm not focusing too much on penciling the background is because I'm going to create 3D models for all of these, and I'm going to use my initial sketch from Procreate as a foundation for the camera in Blender to make sure that my scene looks roughly the way that I want it to. If I'd spent a lot of time creating a perfect line art here in this stage, I would have been wasting, frankly, a lot of time that I was never going to use. So moving over to 3D, I'm going to let this just play for a few minutes. This was actually one of the more time-consuming parts of the entire project. I'm not an amazing modeler, so I spent a lot of time solving problems that I created while working. And a lot of my references that I was using were just basic sprite sheets from Sonic CD as I'm going through. So I'm looking at sprites in 2D, and I'm just trying to imagine them in 3D, and then I'm modeling them. So this whole first beginning process is mostly kit bashing. You can kind of think of it as just small building blocks, and then we're going to build a house out of it or a castle or whatever. These few building blocks are going to be used to generate the rest of the scene. I'm using a lot of workflows and techniques I've learned over the years. Mostly just the screw modifier is incredibly powerful when it comes to cylindrical objects or objects that are basically the same all the way around. So think of like camera lenses or anything cylindrical. So in this instance, if you can create a side profile of it and wrap it around itself and it creates the whole object, a screw modifier is one of the more efficient ways to model these objects. So I did that for the platform. The rest of the objects were created with basic Boolean operations and basically box modeling. It's honestly quite simple stuff, but there were some tricky areas that I got into. For all of the texture work, I created really quick and dirty, just black and white textures and then kind of move them around in their UV maps. There's a really specific shader I like to use for these projects that gets a nice airbrushy look. What you do is you create a layer weight node. You take the layer facing output and plug it into a color ramp. And in the color ramp, you set the color ramp type to cardinal, and then you essentially create a gradient map for that object. And the reason I like to use cardinal is it kind of throws in some nice reflective different colors in there that normally you wouldn't think about. And so that it has a really nice end result. And then you plug that color ramp into a principled BSDF, and you essentially have sort of an airbrush look. And you can move the colors around afterwards to kind of crank them the way that they need to be. I'm going to be using Cycles Render for the entire thing because I want the bounce lights on everything. I'm not really here to teach you how to learn 3D or give you 3D advice. I don't think you would want to learn 3D from me. I've just followed tutorials over the years. I've been using Blender since I was very young. I'm still terrible at it. So a lot of this is just guessing. My topology is not amazing. A lot of the methods I use are hacky because I'm using them for illustrative purposes. The ends justify the means with the way that I model. They're going to be used only for 2D purposes, so I don't need to worry about how they're going to function in a game engine, so I'm not really that worried about how well they are modeled, frankly. There's some parts that I skip here, but essentially I just exported each one of these scenes individually on their own layers, so I think it was a total of 4 or 5 different layers. And then I composite them all together in a Clip Studio Paint file, and then I get to work on the characters. I'm going to be showing all 4 characters at once. They have a similar process. This whole video is basically one giant shill for my character airbrush course. So if you want to know in detail how I create these characters, there's a link in the description. You can go to my Gumroad page. It's currently 80% off at the time of this video, and I'll be running this sale for a while. So it's normally $40. I'm going to be running it for $8. I think it's a great course that I put together. I'm going to teach you from start to finish in Affinity Designer how I go from my sketch to a complete render. But the basic gist is I start in grayscale using paths, and I paint over the paths. I have some shortcut stuff here and there, and then I just add gradient maps on top of everything, and it all comes to life. So I'm just going to let these 4 play out for a bit, and then we'll put it all together in a final composite. So I'm just going to show all 4 characters being rendered at the same time. Since the process is the same, I go from sketch to shapes to grayscale to gradient mapping. If you want a more in-depth look at how I make these characters, consider checking out my course with the link in the description to my Gumroad page. The rest of the time is going to be spent compositing everything, creating background elements of various kinds. So this process just takes time. There's no shortcut around this. One thing that I had to keep in mind that is always frustrating when doing large pieces like this with a lot of hard surface objects in it, like mechanical machinery stuff, is just perspective, making sure my perspective was always in check. At the end of the day, I don't think my perspective was true to the Blender camera, but it was true mostly to the piece, so it looks believable enough. Something I really like doing that has really helped me as an artist is when I walk away from a piece, I will write down what I think needs to be changed and sort of pain points in the project. That way, when I come back to the piece in the morning or later in the day or later in the week, I have a list of things that I need to tackle. And so this sort of iterative self-critique has really helped me in my own pieces to identify things that need to be changed So for example, many times throughout this piece, I felt like the characters weren't popping well enough. And I sent it to friends for feedback, and they all said the same thing, which just affirmed what I already thought, but that's good. It's good to have someone who thinks the same way, sees the same problems you do, and calls you out on them. It's very helpful. So one of the ways that you can deal with this, and this is a very concept art hacky way of doing things, this isn't very realistic, but it is a good way to make sure that your pieces read well, is to just add some light haze, some smoke, something to push things in the back further into the back. The characters in this piece, particularly in the Sonic Jam artwork, are super bright. Like everything is basically a bright midtone. Making the characters pop actually made more sense to make the background dark at points. So you're gonna see me, I'm gonna darken up some of these layers. So instead of things getting lighter as they regress, they kind of pop back into the shadows and then pop out again. And that ended up being a really helpful way to control the composition, so that way your eyes were following where the characters were, and then also just giving a sense of depth, like there were actual lights in the area that were blocking light or obscuring light. Now throughout the course of this piece, I use a variety of applications. It's actually kind of frustrating. I start in Affinity Designer, which 2.0 currently has a bug that renders things improperly. So then I have to move over to Photoshop and then gradient map it there. And then I finally export those into flat images to be composited in Clip Studio Paint. Clip Studio Paint is my painting program of choice. I have Photoshop for work-related reasons, and I have Affinity Designer because I like it the best for bang for buck. I think they're a great company, they make good software, but there's a really frustrating rendering bug right now where if you mask an object inside a mask, it gets super pixelated and it doesn't render properly. But exporting to a PSD fixed that problem and I was able to finish it off. One of the ways that you can get a lot of detail quickly is just by making little marks. So I'm doing this thing where I'm just kind of using a hard round brush to create lights and then add a glow on top of them to kind of create some sort of depth, and like there's lights way off in the background. Another thing you're going to see me do is polish these 3D renders. And one of the primary ways I like to do that, I create these linear strokes that kind of have tapering on each end, and then they have a slight glow to them. Kind of like this reference that I'm using from the Jam artwork, you can see that a lot of the hard surface objects in this piece kind of have a nice bevel and glow to them. Here in a new document, I'm isolating and creating textures from the sprite artwork and recreating them in high quality, just black and white, and then I'm going to add a gradient map / color on top of them. And then I'm going to copy and paste them together and then bring them back into my composition. And then using the free transform tool, I'm going to perspective warp them in the background, just kind of really flesh out this area a lot more. You know, one thing I really like about Sonic CD in general, and I grew up with the US soundtrack, is just how atmospheric the entire experience is compared to the other games. So I really wanted to build a sense of atmosphere with haze and smoke, like this is a working factory that the gang is just running through. You're also going to see me hop back into Blender and the 3D environment to kind of adjust some things. I'm feeling like it's not totally fleshed out, so I wanted to add a few more elements, and I go back in and create kind of a new scene and then render it out real quick and throw it back in there just to really fill out the space in the environment. I also go in and add more platforms because I felt like there's so many in the level. I just wanted to have them kind of flying around in the back. And another thing that I did is I sort of applied a blur as the background recedes. Now this was a little tricky to do because Clip Studio Paint doesn't work non-destructively, so there was no way to edit these things after the Gaussian blur was applied. And I couldn't just use a field blur or a sort of like camera blur to the entire thing because I wanted to have a little bit more control over it. So the way that I built depth using a blur is by sort of just selecting out certain elements out of the peripheral view and then just applying either a 6 pixel, a 10 pixel, or a 15 pixel Gaussian blur to everything. And I sort of just had it structured in my mind where those went. I'm not too happy with Amy's hammer hit effects at this point, so I'm going to rethink how this Badnik is getting destroyed and what he looks like, and just add some last minute details here. Can't forget our boy Metal Sonic. He had to be in the piece somewhere, of course. He's kind of integral to Sonic CD. Now, before I finish the picture, I made a few adjustments that were done off screen. I actually spent like another 2 hours off screen that I should have recorded, but I didn't. But basically, there was some character shadow stuff that I needed to deal with back in the original file. So I went back in to make sure all the character shadows were gradient mapped properly. And I'm going to show you the before and after here so you can see exactly what I changed. And then for the final sauce, my secret little trick that I like to do for these pieces to get that nice old style noisy texture is to open the project in Microsoft Paint. Yes, Microsoft Paint. Open it in Microsoft Paint and save it as a GIF. And it will automatically pixelate and dither exactly like the classic photos. Now, if you want to go one step further, you can open up that GIF photo in a program of choice and add a slight blur to it, and you're basically done. If you'd like to get your hands on these files, the PSD and the Blender file are available also on my Gumroad. Those are totally free. Tips are not appreciated. You don't need to tip me. These are totally free project files that you can have for this piece.
Thanks for checking out the video, guys. Triple Shill here for the 8th time. If you want access to my character airbrush course, it's available right now for only $8. Normally it's $40. You're gonna save a lot of money, you're gonna learn a lot of stuff, and you're gonna make something that I know you're gonna be proud of. So go check it out, link in the description, gumroad.com/tripplejaz. Thanks, guys. Make good art.